Welcome back to Gale Force Wins Season 4.
Hello everybody, we're at my favorite hotel in St. John's, the Alt Hotel. Thanks to the staff and the manager for letting me and Kayla to be doing an interview at their nice hotel. I love this hotel personally, I love the restaurant, and I would recommend the steak to whoever lives in St. John's. Best steak in town, for sure. This is my friend Kayla. Very nice to meet you. Let's start with your name because we were just chatting about it.
Yes. So I'm Kaylah Mercer. Yes, we were speaking earlier on where my name came from, and it was a soap opera star from popular show in the 80s. I think it's actually still airing today, Days of Our Lives.
Yes, I remember that from the show Friends.
Oh, funny. You know what? I've never seen Friends, so maybe I should.
Yes, one of the characters specifically was one of the actors at Days of Our Lives. That was the whole team. Yeah.
So I tell my mom that's why I'm so dramatic. She named after a soap opera star.
So what do you do for a living, generally speaking?
Well, I tell everyone that I'm a mom first. So I'm a mom. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, and I've been married for almost 6 years now. And I also have a couple of other gigs that are around more like volunteer-based work. So I sit on the board of directors for Choices for Youth and the board of directors for the St. John's Farmers Market. Ooh. So very busy, but one of my big passions kind of growing up was always giving back to the community. And helping those in need, and that's how my parents raised me. So I try to show my children what that's like to give back to community, and that it's important to spend time.
Yeah, the morals that you need to teach kids. Yeah. One thing I always liked about you, and it's also the first thing that whenever I hear your name, I'm reminded of, is the topic we talked about, Tequity Plus, likability.
Yes.
I am very young. If you wanted to go back and give advice about likability to a 22, 23-year-old, any university student, any college student, what would be the first thing that you would say about likability?
Well, I could put myself back in your shoes at your age, and I actually got into my professional career pretty early. It was pretty quickly after my undergrad, and I think a big weight you put on yourself when you enter to the workforce is they have to like me, or you'll do maybe sometimes things outside of your job description or other additional tasks to show that you want to be liked or appreciated or kept on. I put a lot of, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so if I could go back and tell myself and in the future workforce, young women, young professional women, about likability, it's probably just to be yourself. Not everybody's going to like you, and that's a really hard thing to hear sometimes, because when we go through our career path, or we go through even the school system, you go into a room. If you're a new person, you moved here, you didn't know anybody here, you came here, you walk into a room, you want people to like you, you want them to accept you. Exactly. So I think it's no different than going into the workforce. When you get hired by a division or a department, you walk in, you're so excited. You want people to appreciate you, who you are as a person, and you want to, be kept on in your role, potentially grow up in your, move on up in your positions, depending on what your career goals are. But at the end of the day, it's actually the least important thing. Being authentic to yourself. Yes, absolutely. Because I think we, especially young women, tend to cater more to our environment or to work tasks so that we're liked.
Yes, I agree.
And it's really hard to move out of that, because I've been a perfectionist my entire life. It's been something I've been working on for the last, 2.5 years, kind of moving away from environments where I can't be myself, or I feel like I'm almost an actress, because I want that likability factor to be so high. But as I'm entering my mid-30s now, I'm 12 years into my career, and if I were to write a paper now on things that got me to where I am, it wouldn't be that everyone along the way liked me.
Like me, yeah.
And
I
moved
always
me
ask the
forward.
question, do I like everybody? Do I feel like I like everyone the same? The answer is always no. You have some people in your life that you obviously spend more time with, you know about them a lot, so you have that connection with them, and as soon as their name comes up, you're like, oh, I love this person.
Yes, yes.
But when a new person comes in, I don't think anybody would judge you based on the knowledge or the experience that you have. It's more about getting to know you, and ultimately, it's not a force. Like you can't force it on everybody to necessarily like you along the way. You got to do you, and whether they like it or not, whether you're suitable for the job or not, you'll be laid off or continue working with them, which is an important factor in my opinion. I think very, very, very important. But I feel like as far as my generation goes, that likability part is becoming more important because as soon as you see someone, the next thing you do, I don't want to call it stalking, but the next thing you do, you start going through their social media accounts, trying to find out where they're from instead of having that conversation to get to know them.
Yes.
And not everybody necessarily posts on social media how their actual life looks like. I say that all the time. It might be a little bit contradicting when you look at my social media, but I try my best to only share the moments that I want to remember myself. It's about happy days and sad days.
Yeah.
Everything's not bubbly. But at the same time, I feel like it's a bit narrower in my generation, whereas there is that judging part when it comes to social media and checking that. Now, I know that you said you're a mom of two. What is your take on that? What do you think of your kids going through social media and not judging, but basically coming to conclusions about someone's personality based on their social media posts?
I actually did a CBC interview on this topic with Jacqueline.
Ooh, nice.
Yes.
Love Jacqueline.
It was actually a very interesting topic because it's come up quite frequently, especially in the world of those who are in momhood and who have children that are going through school. When I went through a school system that social media wasn't introduced until I was in high school. I have younger nieces and nephews now that are going through the grade school system and they have cell phones. Which I have two minds on this because it's my biggest fear, honestly, as a parent, that one day my kids are going to be like social media will be their life for a season of their life. And how can I allow that to be a part of their growth and development? It's a part of inclusion with your friends. There's that other side of it too, where if I tell my daughter, you can't have a cell phone, but all of her friends have a cell phone.
Yeah, they can't.
Then is she going to be bullied? Is she going to be exempted from, birthday parties or social events because they're only sharing them on social media?
Absolutely.
So my husband and I have, we have Instagram, we have LinkedIn, he has Facebook, he has a couple of other things that I haven't even heard of, like Reddit and Snapchat.
Yes.
But I think one of the good things we're doing as parents is becoming familiarized with the social medias, but also becoming aware of the safety requirements around introducing social media. There's actually courses now through I believe it's RNC, the fabulous Wanda Tiller from Tequity.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure there's some work going on behind the scenes there, and we're able to maybe have more access to what it's like to have online safety in general for our children today. But it is inevitable, and I think honestly it's going to be more of a useful tool in their generation when they grow up. I think the way that the young generation connects now to each other, albeit it's sometimes like, hey, instead of a phone call, it'll be a text, do you want to meet up at the park? Maybe they'll all be at the park together and they're all just playing Pokemon Go in the park, but at least they're outside together. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
We can look at it from a positive perspective. But, I think I have a lot to learn. And I think there's a lot of things I also need to let go because I have these ideas in my mind on what's going to happen. I watch too many crime shows. So I feel like I go to the worst case scenario in my mind about what the social media path can lead to. But because our family use these socials now and these platforms now, that my kids kind of understand I even say to my daughter, well, she's older than my son. My son doesn't often care, but I'll say, oh, Sophia, you look so cute. Can I take a video of you and can I put it on social media? Sometimes she'll say, no, I don't want you to post that. And sometimes she'll say, Mommy, take a picture of me for Instagram.
Yes.
So, I'm teaching her kind of consent about that early, even though she's 4. She may not fully understand, but it's the conversation, the dialogue about that, and saying we don't post certain things on
Social media.
online, and make sure we're always these are mommy's friends, and these are actually people mommy knows. They're not strangers or whatever. But I try to tell myself that I have a bit of time to learn more, but I know I'm going to blink and then I'm going to be there in that situation. So I'm very grateful though for those kind of ahead of me who are kind of in the thick of that now and trying to provide advice on navigating that world when I get there. But it's definitely, I can't shy away from it because it's not going to go away. So I don't want to, pretend like it's not going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it's not
one of the many challenges of motherhood, but it will definitely be a part of our story for sure at some point.
Yes. Touch base on the motherhood part.
Yes.
So there was obviously a pause in your career to have your 2 angels.
Yes.
How did you overcome with that? Was that pause a good thing or a bad thing for you? I'm not saying would you recommend it or not. I'm just asking, did it affect your business or your work directly, negatively? Or was it just a pause, you needed a break, so you had kids?
I had a very unique introduction to motherhood, I would say. So when my husband and I got married in October of 2018, and we talked about children were definitely in our plan, but not in our immediate plan. And when I came back from our honeymoon, I'd find out I was a month pregnant. So it was a very big surprise. I actually didn't tell anybody for 3 months. Because I had to process it myself, and we had to shift. We had a 5-year plan, and I was looking for, looking as a perfectionist that these boxes had to be ticked before we got to parenthood. But that just wasn't the plan for the universe. So when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was about 7 months pregnant, and the place where I worked had essentially gone under shared services. So what that meant was pretty much everybody's job was changed to temporary, and we all had to apply our own jobs.
Oh, wow.
Again.
Was this during COVID or was it
this was just before COVID. So my daughter was born in June of 2019. She was supposed to be due in July, the end of July, but I ended up having some complications in my pregnancy, and then I ended up having her early. So during that whole, it was quite a stressful event anyways, going into motherhood. But at the same time, I was 2 weeks postpartum, and I had to interview for 6 different jobs.
Wow.
So I had to be physically there on site. So anyone who's listening to this who's been postpartum, it's not the most glamorous time in your life. You're leaking from everywhere, and I had to try to remember how to answer questions. And to this day, I can't tell you what was asked of me because I actually have no recollection of that 2 hours I sat down. All to say that I actually didn't get a job in that first round. I wasn't successful. And so I spent, almost 6 months of my maternity leave looking for jobs.
Wow.
And looking for daycare.
Wow. I think that's a bit challenging, especially in St. John's.
Yes. And when my child was 6 months old, we had gotten Snowmageddon, and we had COVID-19. So I was home with a 6-month-old, fully isolated, with no support because we were in those lockdown bubbles.
Yes.
And I ended up going back to work 9 weeks early, and my husband took the rest of the time off just so I could almost decompress and just have some time away from being a mom, just 24/7, getting back to it, right? So, during the course of that time, I was successful in getting another position within that area, and I went back to work, and then 10 months after, I was off again for my second maternity leave.
There you go.
And yeah, so I will say that before I became a mom, I was much more interested in work. I would stay late, no problem. I enjoyed doing the extra research. I enjoyed even doing the extra social events, that they have outside of that. When I went back to work the first time, I had I guess what they generically call the mom guilt. Like it was trying to, like relearning how to have that balance with work and home.
Yes.
I could no longer offer extra time at the end of the day. I could no longer offer, I'll come in a little bit early to help with the team because I had a child to take care of.
Yes.
My first year back from my first mat leave, I actually didn't have childcare.
Wow.
So God love my mother. I don't know what I would do without her because she actually retired from her nursing career early.
Wow.
To take care of my child for the year until I was waiting to get into childcare. So
it was meant to be.
It was meant to be in a way, but it all worked out after. But it's
a journey. For sure.
It was a journey, and there's lots of things that you're not really prepared for. That is probably an untapped resource here, to be honest. But generally there's this prenatal course that moms-to-be take to help you with like the process of having the baby, but navigating your work, like your professional self, back into the workforce after you have a child is a very challenging time. I think I cried every morning for the first 3 months going back to work because I felt overwhelmed. Like, does she think I'm leaving her? Like, she's alone with with her grandmother, which is fine, but I was like worrying about the socialization aspect. And remember, these are COVID kids, so they grew up with people 6 feet apart and masks on, and
yes.
It was just such a different world, and I was just trying to learn how to navigate that. And then I was also trying to feel like I did before I left to go on mat leave back into my old position.
Yes.
And there's so much had changed, but so much hadn't changed at the same time. But it was just, who am I?
Did you feel the growth in you?
I felt, I would say I haven't felt growth in work in my professional life.
Okay.
At that time, I would say I think I was more focused on being a good mom and being there for my child between the hours of getting home from work and then her bedtime. So trying to fit that in. So I didn't really do a whole lot of extra professional development or professional growth, I would say. But I'm in a really good place now because my daughter will be 5 the end of next month, and my son will be 3 the end of September. So I'm in that place now where I can leave them with a babysitter, or I don't feel as guilty kind of contributing to the community by engaging more in volunteer work, being able to be here with you today.
Yes.
Like if you asked me 2 years ago, I would be like, I can't. So there's that piece of it as well, where it's hard to navigate new waters, but trying not to mourn the old you, and also to celebrate the new you and what you can do now as a mom and an employee and a professional person and someone who likes to do community-based work and volunteer. So
one thing I find very interesting about what you just said, obviously I don't have a kid, but looking at my mom, she learned that on my brother, not on me. Like, she couldn't say I can't, not necessarily because she couldn't, but just like she just felt like she needed to be on that position of
Yes.
being everywhere.
Yes.
So I have a lot of memories of being in rooms with a lot of people, and by the way, like, I was a first child, so it was a lot different. I was from a different generation, everything, but with the second child, she was more like, okay, I can't, I have other commitments, I gotta go home, my baby needs me, and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of it is also learning from your first child. I feel like after you have your first child, you kind of like know the boundaries that you gotta set to be a good mom. And I've seen that in my own mother, and she agrees. Whenever we talk about this, she'd be like, yes, I never assumed that like I could do that back then, but after I had my second child, I was like, okay, you did it once, you can do it again.
Yes.
And you got to set more boundaries,
Yes.
set more limits,
Yes.
set more time for your own family, so that when they look back at their memories, they have a picture of their mom, which is nice.
It's true.
very, very
your mom is very right. I would say the first. I used to feel so guilty after I had Zoph, because I felt like she was, my husband and I joke that she's like our guinea pig, because you don't know what you're doing, and you bring this child home. And I remember the first day we brought her into the house, we were like, so what do we do? And we're like, do we put her in the swing? Do we lay her down? Do we feed her? Is she hungry? Does her diaper need to be changed? It's all so new. And I would say, what I tell Zofia now is that we grew together.
That's very true.
Right? Because
very, very true.
we were learning about each other. I was learning to be a mom. She was trying to figure out the world as well. And when you do have the second, you feel a lot more confident.
Yes.
And I would agree with your mom in that it's really hard to say no after the first child, because you feel like, am I going to be disadvantaged if I say no? Or am I going to receive any more invitations out because I've already turned down the last 3? And you're kind of holding on to a little bit more of your old self. But by the time I had my second, they're 2.5 years apart almost. I felt like, I'm in my mom era.
I'm a mom now.
I'm a mom, and I said, I think that I need to just put that part of my life on pause and make this a priority, and then, because it will come back,
It will.
Once you kind of navigate the new waters of motherhood, and then you're like, you have a handle on the paddles, and you're like, okay, this is good. I can do this.
Yes.
And then you're able to, become or bring back more of your old self. Not the same,
but
a different version of you. Yeah. Like when I had Zofia, it was like I was reborn in a new person. I wasn't my old self anymore.
But you know what's funny? The fact that if I look back to 2 years ago, I know her, but it's not me today.
No, yes.
People go through phases.
Yes.
Even the way you look, the way you speak, everything changes, not in a good or a bad way. It's just that you're different now. You learned more, you're experienced. You obviously are going to react differently to different things. And that's something that is naturally coming to every person. So
yes.
I'm glad that you went through that.
And when you get there too, you'll hopefully have lots of advice from others before you,
Yes.
and on guiding the journey, because it's a journey, and the journey is going to look different for everybody. But it's for me, it hasn't stopped me from wanting to achieve other professional goals that I've set out for myself. It's just they're taking a little longer to get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talking about goals, a little bit shifting to technology now again.
Yeah.
Let's talk about LinkedIn.
Yes.
We
LinkedIn.
both love LinkedIn. LinkedIn
We
is
do.
Yes, LinkedIn is actually my favorite app. Just saying that, putting that out there, because I love communicating with people, learning about their careers, being able to connect with people in different cultures, learning about their cultures, learning about their jobs and what's on the go. I find that a lot of people stay away from LinkedIn specifically because they think it's a little bit too political, it's a little bit too business related.
Yes.
But I find that all the content that we see on social media, like platforms like Instagram, X, or any other platform, I see those news on LinkedIn ahead of the time, like they, which is really interesting.
Yes.
But I like the aspect of connecting to people.
Yes.
Outside my bubble, outside where
Yes.
I live. What do you have to say about LinkedIn? How do you like LinkedIn? Do you really feel like someone who's in business or working at the government needs to have that platform? What's your take from that platform?
Well, if you look at my metrics on my phone, I spend the most amount of my social media time on LinkedIn. I think it's a very valuable and relatively untapped resource for a lot of young professionals.
Yeah.
Again, I hear the same thing. Oh, it's like an older person's app, or it's only for people with businesses, or it's only for people who have jobs. But I mean, the last 4 or 5 positions I've gotten in my career have gotten through direct contacts with LinkedIn. You're able to reach out directly to the person who's recruiting. You can have a little bit of, dialogue around what the position's about that's not quite in the position description. You can also connect to people who are a little bit outside of your reach.
Yes.
And I find that, great opportunities. I've actually heard about Techquity through LinkedIn.
Oh, wow.
I did, yeah. Someone had shared something about, Jacqueline Lee does those summaries of the Techquity meetings, and it just got shared from I think there was 3 connections removed, and I was like, who's Jacqueline Lee? And I was like, oh my God, I need to know this woman. And I actually went to the AGM for TechNL, I think it was 2 years ago now. just to meet her. Literally just to meet her, because I was like this, I knew she was going to be there, I knew she was the chair, and I was following all the great work she was doing via LinkedIn. She had no idea who I was. But it's like, it's an interesting avenue to learn about people professionally, because I find that in other social media tools or apps, you're posting more of your personal life, and that's fine too, but who you are, I like people to kind of know me outside of my personal life, outside of, being a mom and a wife and a sister and, an aunt and a daughter. Like, it's my way of showcasing my professional success, and to be able to share that with others who have similar interests.
Okay.
I think, there's a lot of conferences that are showcased literally only on LinkedIn. And if you're not an active part of that,
you won't be able to.
You won't really be able to engage or even be aware that they exist. But it's also, I think, a forum. Like, I'm after reaching out to a couple of different people who I've never met before, and they've just had this post up saying like they're really struggling to find a position, and this is their background. I'm like, my gosh, how is someone who has a nursing degree and like like a technology degree is like struggling to find work,
yeah.
Right? So just having that connection, putting them in connections with other people who are hiring, and being able to speak to that person, I think is more valuable than
any other platform. Yes,
and quite frankly, like, even from a recruitment and retention perspective, I've told all my staff, I have a staff of 7 right now, I'm like, get LinkedIn. There are LinkedIn learning resources that are incredibly talented individuals offering their expertise and providing you a certificate for course completion that you're able to showcase on your resume, or just even in conversation. And not many people realize that that's even an additional resource to being a part of the LinkedIn community, is access to research articles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going back again to what you just said earlier, how would you start a conversation on LinkedIn? Let's just say you want to start talking to someone in Philadelphia, for example. You obviously went through their profile, you're just interested in their career, you're interested to learn more about their job. How would you start that conversation? What would your message be?
If you asked me 15 years ago, I would have said I would not have reached out to them. Because I was, I would have been 20 then, and I think I was still very intimidated by those who were well established in their careers, or at least appeared that way to me. Today, there's actually a company called Prescribey. I won't go into detail, but they had like a recent job posting, and it came up in my feed, and I was doing a bit of research on them. I have never heard of them before, but they have roots here in Newfoundland. It's an Icelandic company. It's the CEO is actually an MD, and I was very interested in the work they're doing. So I literally added all of them to my LinkedIn account, and I have emailed 2 of them to just say, hey, I'm like super interested in the work that you're doing. Like, I'm working for the government right now, but like my previous life was very much involved in health data technology, health innovation. Like, how can we create efficiencies for practitioners and healthcare system? There has to be a better way of doing something,
yes.
Right? And I love to figure out what that avenue is. So, I just kind of, what do the kids say these days? I DM'd, I slid into the DMs.
I slid to their DMs, straight to the DMs.
Oh, I sound so youthful. But yeah, and I think that's actually, maybe it won't be received well on the other end, but I think when you write
when you're genuine, I feel like they take it.
Exactly. You've done a bit of research on who they are and their work, and you have a genuine interest for the work they're doing, or where their career path has taken them, and you are a bit vulnerable in your message to say, like, I'd love to learn more, or if you have time in your calendar in a few weeks, I'd love to just connect, just to have that connection.
Yes.
Because I'm very, I believe in, like, the fates and the alignments and the serendipitous moments of life, and I really do believe that paths are meant to cross, and whichever way they do, and that down the road you may actually
100%
meet somebody,
100%.
And then you'll have like, oh my gosh, this fabulous person who I who I met at Techquity.
Yes,
or who
we
I
met on
met
Techquity.
who I chatted with Prescribey, then, like that's that connection, where you may not speak to them every day, but it's just, I feel like it's still something you're able to follow through on, because I always celebrate everyone's successes on LinkedIn. I think when someone posts, oh, I have a new job, or got a promotion, or I've changed gears,
like the happiest
I don't
thing
want to be in
ever.
leadership anymore. I'd like to go back, and where my heart is in business development or becoming an analyst. You still celebrate all the wins, and sometimes
Those are real wins, though.
They're
This
real
is
wins.
what you've been working for it for a while. I feel like the difference between social media, well, LinkedIn is also a part of social media. The biggest difference between social media and LinkedIn particularly is that what you post on LinkedIn, you've been working on for a really, really long time. What you see on Instagram is just one moment, or what you see on
Exactly.
Facebook is just about a specific time, wasn't planned, you just take a picture, you post it. Now, not necessarily, obviously, we're not influencers, that's their job, it's a completely different aspect, but looking at it, I feel like LinkedIn is more about what I've been trying to do, and now I've done it. And I'm showing it to the world that I've done this. That's the moment of, okay, we're going back and we're restarting it again. So I really like that about the platform. What feature do you think is missing in LinkedIn?
I think LinkedIn is the authenticity that you can show on LinkedIn makes it such a great tool. I think that, like you said with Instagram, people put their highlight reels, right?
Yes.
But how many times have you opened up LinkedIn and said, oh, like there's been an unfortunate situation, the company I've been working for the last 25 years have closed, and now I find myself in a situation where I'm looking for jobs, or they've been like unceremoniously terminated, and it was blindsiding event, and they show their vulnerability of like the loss of something that was so valuable to them, and that they're willing to open up their whole page for someone to help them. I love that about LinkedIn. I think
It's about directly helping them and
yes,
guiding them through.
it is, and sometimes sometimes the stories are sad, but like there's so much support in that community of LinkedIn, whether it's like local, national, or international. You will find yourself landing well somewhere, right? A feature that's missing from LinkedIn, I've actually gone through, applying for jobs before on LinkedIn, and they do really great on your application was submitted. Oh, your application's been opened and reviewed. And then they send you this update on, prepare for interview questions. But they don't tell you anything after that. So,
Continuous
right? It's like
connection, yeah.
close the gap almost would be a really great tool to have. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know the policies around LinkedIn. Like, I'm not sure if there's the rules around not being able to show newscasts right now on like socials on the Meta platforms.
Yeah, I feel like you have to disable it if you don't want to see the news, and it's very much so like country based, because those platforms go by the laws and regulations that are different in each country. But I do agree on that. Not a lot of news end up on social platforms anymore in comparison to the past. That's for sure.
So at least the news around like success stories with research and reporting, I'm subscribed to CDC and the World Health Organization based research, so I always get to see that up to date. But I don't know, maybe an improvement could be just from a safety perspective, and that you're not being fooled, I think, for thinking you're a successful applicant for a job when that person doesn't actually exist, is that the mandated verify me. Because right now it's optional.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's optional
I've
to
seen
verify.
the badge right next to your name.
And I actually messed mine up because my name on my LinkedIn is Kaylah Mercer. Mercer's my married name.
Okay.
But I uploaded my passport as my verification that's got my maiden name. So now I can't verify myself because they say I'm unverifiable. all because I got married.
That's funny.
So I'm in the middle of trying to mitigate that situation now. But outside of that, I have to say I find it to be such a useful tool, and I'm on it daily. if there's anyone that's trying to promote a conference, or if an ex-colleague of mine recently was leader of the year for virtual.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yes, for virtual care. So I wanted to share that and be like, everyone, look how fabulous my friend is, and look at the good work that Newfoundland is doing. So it's yeah, very useful.
Very, very
and
useful.
I find it, sometimes people change jobs, but like you just didn't know that they left, but you could look at their profile and you're like, oh, that's where you are.
Yes.
Like, how did you get there? Or like, congratulations. Because not everybody posts their
I love the
position
context
changes.
that comes with a post on LinkedIn, because most of the time it's not just a picture of me and my new office. It's a context of how I ended up in that office and what happened that I ended up in that office, and I find that very interesting, because you don't find that on any other platforms.
That's
because
right.
You just feel like, oh, it's too personal. But when it comes to LinkedIn, you're like, I'm going to show off how I make my way through, so that for the next opportunity, whoever is going through my post, they can see that I've done it and I've put so much time into it. Which is pretty impressive. Myself personally, I love the idea of connecting to people outside Newfoundland, just because I feel like it's really important to let people know where you're living, because they will tell you more about where they're living, and you'll get to know their culture, you'll get to know their space, you'll get to know the way business works in different space, and you will kind of like start advancing what's missing in the place that you're currently living, creating new opportunities, creating new jobs, meeting new people.
Right,
Yes, I love that aspect. What do you think of the available opportunities for people in Newfoundland on LinkedIn? Do you think there are lots of them available? Would you say a lot of Newfoundland companies would hire on LinkedIn, or are they still trying to catch up? Because like most of the hires are now online. Most of the jobs postings are online.
They are.
So
and some of them are actually LinkedIn exclusive positions, so they're not posted on any other platform. I always think Newfoundland has to catch up a little bit. Like we're always a little bit behind, and it's not our fault. It's just I think there's a huge change management piece when it comes here. A lot of our infrastructure is actually quite outdated.
Yes.
And even the way we up until 5 years ago, paper-based documentation was still a very alive and well practice. So shifting from, I'll tell you, when I got my first job, I was going to places and physically providing a resume. Now that was only 17 years ago. Okay. So there's like almost organizational, cultural changes that have to happen for that type of thing, I think, to be fully on LinkedIn. I think the future of LinkedIn, that could be a fully operational recruitment, retention, and hiring strategy for a lot of businesses. They do a really good job now. There's a lot of lessons learned, I think, that eventually will be incorporated and mitigated going forward. But from what was the question again? I just went on a tangent. And
that's okay. I was just asking if you think there are many, basically making it short, many opportunities on LinkedIn for people who are trying to find a job in Newfoundland, based on the posts that you receive. Obviously, it's
what I would say, I have a job search set up for a specific title and a specific location. Okay. But I also have one set up for remote. And what I would tell you is there are way more positions available outside of Newfoundland for the types of positions I'm looking for the remote flexibility. I live here, my family's here, I'll be raising my children here, so ideally for me to stay in Newfoundland, it has to be a business here or an organization that would offer maybe a hybrid work situation, or I like to call it flexibility, because I think it just works differently for a unique person. But from a job amount, I would say there's way more from outside of Newfoundland, and that could just be a reflection of maybe a lot of organizations and businesses here just aren't utilizing that tool, which I would recommend doing, because especially we may be a little bit of a generation apart, but we both still utilize that tool so much that there's definitely value add in having that as a part of your job hunting practice or the job posting practice.
I find that with LinkedIn and the works and opportunities that are posted in Newfoundland, a lot of them require, well, at least the job description says that a lot of them require experience. Someone like me who has not even graduated
It's
yet.
a pain point for me. I know where you're going with this.
I'm glad that you know where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
Let's just put it this way. I want to know your perspective. Let's just say you own a business and you're hiring. Obviously, having someone with experience makes your life and your business a lot easier and smoother.
But not always.
Really, how come?
Yes, not always. I would say that my philosophy on recruitment and retention is not aligned with the general accepted practices. So when you are looking for a job, you will have a job position description or a job ad that will highlight the key pieces of the work and maybe some screening criteria and these almost like mandatory qualifications you have to have in order to be considered or screened in for the role. You will never get somebody who meets 100% of those requirements, ever.
Interesting.
I truly believe that, because what you're seeing on a one-page document of what the job is about is the tip of the iceberg. So I feel like we're often doing a disservice to those looking for positions by screening out based on the fact they don't tick the 5 boxes in the screening criteria. I look at a resume and I say, okay, they have post-secondary. They know 2 languages. They have experience in customer service, because most of the time when you graduate, you are likely working at a coffee shop or a grocery store or something that, if you're lucky enough to get a professional work term, which doesn't always work out for the individual, you are capable of learning something.
Yes.
And oftentimes we
Look at that specific.
Exactly. And when you look at someone's resume who may have more years of experience, they could be out of university for 10 or 12 years. Maybe their resume, they have lots of valuable experiences and positions, but they hop positions every year. That's not always a bad thing either. But when you bring them in, if they're the successful applicant, sometimes they're a lot more work because you're doing a lot of reverse, right?
Absolutely.
Or you're introducing new practices, or the way they did evaluations is different than the way that the practice requires for this specific role. So as a manager, I don't mind that learning curve. I think most organizations say it's 3 months. I mean, really, it's a year.
Fair enough.
A year. You cannot expect someone, especially if they're brand new to an organization, to know how to come into a role and work in that exact position and know everything, right? So the learning curve is important. But also those young individuals that are just graduated school,
new ideas.
and want to be in the workforce, but you're applying for an entry-level position that, let me guess, says you need 3 to 5 years of experience
Yes.
in the fields. Like, that is setting that individual up for failure in my mind.
Oh, really? Wow.
I do agree. I feel that way. I feel that I was once that person, and I'm like, my God, you know what? Someone had to give me a chance. They said, okay, she doesn't have the experience, but maybe she's like the second best that we got. We're going to have to.
You know what? This is why
let her try.
The person who's actually recruiting.
Yes.
Not to say that I'm applying or saying if I'm eligible to apply. Just to see what's the actual expectations.
Yes, and to see.
Because they will be able to tell you in one line, this is what we expect.
Yes, they will.
If you know different languages, this is a job for you. We're specifically looking for that talent. Now I say talent, different languages take time to learn.
Yes.
That's why I said talent. But I feel like that's very interesting thing to have specifically at LinkedIn, to reach out to the recruiters.
Yes.
You won't have that.
You won't have that if you're applying online on some forum, right?
Yes.
But you have direct access to either the like the recruitment personnel, the HR strategist, specialist, or even sometimes it's the CEO or the VPs that are posting these jobs. So just being able to have that connection and to really learn more about the details that are not written on the position description. Another practice for me is, believe it or not, I'm actually a very anxious person.
Me too.
To be interviewed. I shine bright in many aspects of my life, but when I'm put into a situation where I have to talk about, you know, the worst experience in my career and how I mitigated challenges with difficult members of, you know, your group, I find that very uncomfortable, and I find that
very overwhelming.
You know, you're put into this like 45-minute time slot
that you have to show off.
And I feel like all I do is ramble, and then I'm stuttering, and then I wake up 3 o'clock in the morning saying, "Oh, I should have talked about that."
I always do that. I go home and I read
that I did in like 2019 when I had that situation, but I forgot about it. So I think, you know, I don't put a lot of weight on the interviews because honestly, I have interview anxiety, and the person across from me
I never prepare for that. I came here today without any preparation.
Yes,
because I find that's the best.
Look how we've grown.
This is like the best of me when I don't prepare, because I find that whenever I practice, especially for interviews. Now I understand for tests you got to practice, but for interviews specifically, I find that whenever I practice, I mess up. Because I go there and like all that is in my mind is what I practice, and they'll ask a question that I didn't practice for.
You're trying to cram things, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm up 3 nights before stressing about, oh my gosh, I have to memorize this and that, and I can't remember that experience, and what about that job? Should I include that as an example? And what if I don't have an example of a difficult situation? And all these things are going through my head, and then I show up, I'm sweating, like I'm overwhelmed. I have my resume in front of me, and then there's 8 people around the table, asking me questions, and you know, I just don't think it's a great way of showcasing someone's ability to do a job. I feel the exact same way about exams.
Yes, you know, one time someone told me that for interviews, you have to present yourself in that moment. Mm-hmm. So when you practice for it the day before, you never know. Overnight, you might have learned something, added to your experience. I know that it sounds very unrealistic, but it's real. You might read a research, you might read a book that changes your mindset about a specific thing. So when you go and enter a room with a bunch of people willing to interview you, you have to show yourself at that moment.
Right.
Not yourself the day before, not yourself a month ago. I also disagree with interviewing exactly the same every single time, because I find that's a downfall for everybody. Right. Because not every job is the same. You don't necessarily have to say the exact same words. You don't have to ramble up whatever that comes.
There's other factors too, right? In an interview, does this person jive with like the personalities in the office, and like you know, are they a good addition to the team? Like sometimes there's like that in consideration as well. I just find my practice lately has been when I'm recruiting and there's, you know, 5 or 6 individuals selected to be potentially like the top candidates for the role. I reach out to them before the interview. And I say, hey, like, this is Kaylah. We're going to be interviewing next week, but I just wanted to reach out to see if you have any questions or concerns or anything in advance of our meeting. Sometimes they want to set up like a 10-minute call just to see me and I see them, and then maybe when they come into the room for the interview, they're not as anxious because they're like, okay, we've chatted.
I've seen this person. Yes.
I've seen this person. Like, you know, maybe they had a couple more questions about the role. They felt like they were more prepared to answer the questions, but
they show up and they present themselves in a better way.
Yeah, because sometimes it's not what's on the paper, right? Or maybe it's the paper, and in conjunction with the experience in the room. Is a part of the equation, but it's not the full equation. Like I still always think there's something missing from a recruitment process.
Oh, I totally agree to that, because whenever I look at my resume or whenever I want to add something to my resume, I'm like, okay, that would be really not the thing that I want to put it on my resume. It is one of the things that makes me qualified for the job, but at the same time, I don't know how to put it in my resume.
Right. Like, how do you make cover letter 1 page?
Yes.
When I could write mine 8 pages, right?
Yes. I can write a book.
It's so funny. I have a fun fact, or maybe it's embarrassing for me to say, but I actually didn't know the difference between a CV, a resume, and a cover letter.
Wow.
I did not know.
I only learned that when I was applying for Canada. Because one of the requirements is actually when you apply for your documents, it's actually a very important note. They don't have it on the requirements when you're applying, but if you have a CV that says why you're coming to Canada in the first place, that will give them the trust to look at. I mean, they will look at every page eventually, but having that CV on the front page says, this is me, I'm coming to Canada for this purpose. And that was when I actually started researching on it when I was 17 and 18. I was like, okay, well, this thing called CV, I probably need that.
Yes, because when I was applying for jobs, when I first graduated for my first degree, some of them would say, please apply with your CV. And some would say, please apply with your resume and cover letter. And I'm just like, oh my God, is there a difference? Like, right? Well, things they don't teach you in grade school that you should know. But
yes,
all to say, it's, I think there's so much. I have a lot of friends that work in human resources and employee relations and stuff. And I think that there really is a drive to just improve the overall holistic process of recruitment and retention, and things have changed so much. Even from I'm thinking of my mom's time and my dad's time. They both retired in the last few years, but there was no remote work. There was no flexibility. If you left work because your child had a medical appointment, you didn't get paid. And nowadays it's we have so many wonderful benefits, but sometimes the benefits are not what's weighed heaviest on someone's decision for a position. What's the flexibility?
Though. Yes.
Right? What am I going to be able to, can I spend 3 months in Barbados and be able to work remotely from there? Or, I'm here, I've got 2 small kids, if the daycare's closed, so I have to take a paid leave day every time, or can I, work from home at my best ability with the children there? There's different things now that mean more to people than the total compensation package.
Fair enough, yeah.
So as somebody who's a generation under me, what are the most, when you look for a job, what is the most important things you look for, from a total compensation perspective? Is it the salary? Is it the flexibility? Is it the number of vacation days? Do you care about health or dental benefits?
Oh yeah, healthcare is a must for me. So that's definitely one of the things that I'll look for. One thing I really like to see is the business hierarchy. I shouldn't say that, but I really want to see how the power is divided in that business. I really want to see the percentage of female they have hired. Because obviously, let's agree, business is a male dominancy job or whatnot. It's getting better, but that's one of the most important things that I'll look at. I'll go and see, okay, the CEO is the male, not from a, just want to put it out there, I'm not saying that every CEO must be a female or male. I'm just saying when you search for a job, having someone in that job who's a female and who made their way up there makes you believe in yourself, that you can start at the bottom and work for it harder and achieve what you want to achieve at the end. So that's one of the things that I'll look at. The salary is based on what I'm doing, currently, because I'm a student and I'm an international person, I obviously cannot work more than 20 hours a week. They changed that rule and regulation for a while and I got back to it again. The salary is a point, the location and the opportunities that comes with a job. I really like challenges and I really like competitions. So if I go to a 9 to 5 day, if I go to a job that's 9 to 5 every single day and I'm doing the exact same thing, my personality doesn't fit into that job. I would like to have...
I'm the same way.
Yeah, I would like to have challenges on the way.
Yes.
Every job is stressful. Every job is competitive. But I really like to see people going up and up and up in each job, and I'll actually search for the people working there and I'll look at their resume and I'll be like, okay, she was a student, she did the same degree that I'm doing right now, she's been in the business for the past 20-25 years, this is how she started, this is where she's at, this is how the company's treated. And obviously I know that this may sound really weird, but I sometimes reach out to the people directly and be like, can you please tell me about your experience with this and that? What's your perspective? What can be better in the business? What can I add? I remember one time I was offered a position, and obviously because I am not graduated, I couldn't take it. But in a very nice way, I was just curious. I was like, what do you think that I can, as a person, what do you think I can add to what you're doing currently? Because you gotta look at that aspect. You're not always fitting into a puzzle in a job. You start a job knowing that you gotta bring something into the table. And that's one thing that I think is very important in any job that you have. Let's just say you wanna open a bakery. If you have a certain style of design, people will come up there.
Yes,
People
for sure.
And that's what I really like to learn about the job. So I reach out, or like if I have, I don't know, if I have offers or anything, I try my best to not put them away and be as honest as I can be. Hey, I would really like to accept that position. At this timing, I am a student.
Yeah.
And then I will get the answer, okay, when are you graduating? I wouldn't say I'm graduating in 2026. I would name the month, and I would say I would reach out to you at that time. And if there were any available positions, I would love to experience it and be a part of your team. And saying, I feel like the wording is also very tricky and very important. The way you approach people. Hey, I'm looking for a job. That's a no.
Yeah.
Hey, I am looking for an opportunity. That's a yes, because you're willing to learn whether you get paid or not.
Right.
I am on that stage in my life that I need to learn more and get paid.
That's
and
right.
I totally get that. So whenever I see a job with a high salary, I'd be like, I can negotiate that, and I can say, I would love to learn about the job. I would love to shadow the person. I actually find this really interesting, but on LinkedIn, a lot of people with higher positions, if you make the connection with them and you keep the connection for a while, they will allow you to shadow them remotely, which is something you wouldn't get anywhere else. You would not be able to shadow someone in, I don't know, in Germany or in Switzerland if you want to do it in person. You would not even get that in St. John's. Like, you wouldn't see a manager wanting anyone to follow them, but you will see a manager sitting in their office, putting their phone remotely, not specifically sharing the confidentiality, but like showing what do they do actually in a day. They're not showing you any papers, they're not sharing any content, they're just telling you, this is what I do. If you want to do this job, this is how my day is going to look like. That's something that you wouldn't get. You would see it on a paper. This is our requirements, this is what we expect from you. But you can never visualize it until you experience that. This is why, like I said, LinkedIn is a great app, because the more connections you make, another thing about LinkedIn is that the more connections you make, the more high position people you can reach.
Yes.
Because they also have a limit to people that they want to connect with them. You can follow anybody on LinkedIn, absolutely, but the connection, specifically the connection button, allows you to message them directly. And I find that very interesting. Sometimes there are people who don't want to talk about their jobs. They have so many knowledge about their other interests. So I sometimes reach out to people and be like, let's talk about our interests. For example, I love learning languages. Do you know any languages? And they'll start talking about me. So sometimes there is that moment in your life that you're like, oh, I'm sick of my job. I feel like messages like that on LinkedIn helps you hype you up. Kind of like, okay, I'm having a bad day at my job, but I have other interests that I can rely on and then get back again into my job. So I find that not everybody is ready to talk about their job. And that's totally fine. If they read your message, and by the way, I think reading the message and not responding doesn't mean that they don't want to respond. It means that they're basically busy.
Yes.
All these people on LinkedIn are extremely busy, and I do not require anyone to write back, but I appreciate the conversation whenever. And I make sure that I add that at the end to be like, I really appreciated this conversation, thank you. Because being polite, words are super important in business.
Yes.
Like, not in business, in anything. The way you talk to people, the way you compliment them, the way you reach out to them shows a lot about your personality. The better you talk to them, the better response you will get.
Yes.
That's one important, very, very important thing. You will get it on LinkedIn too, which is pretty nice. Sliding into a DM in LinkedIn has a different meaning than an Instagram. So it's completely different, because like you're reaching out for experience completely. Like you're not reaching out to anyone with a different one. And I like that aspect, to be honest with you, because again, it's very funny to go and be like, okay, this person in, I don't know, in whatever country, okay, they went to this university. Oh, I wonder what university that is. And you start like searching about the university.
Yes.
And then there are tons of opportunities for international students. You're like, oh, maybe I can apply for that competition. You know what I mean? It's an opportunity that comes up to you just by looking at their resume.
That's right.
And their life on LinkedIn. That's
right.
my favorite
It's
thing
fabulous.
on LinkedIn.
So what brought you to the business world? Because you had a different career path, right?
I used to be a computer science student. Funny enough, I've always wanted to learn entrepreneurship. My biggest, maybe I should, okay. I love Steve Jobs. I love everything about technology. I love everything that they've done so far. I really enjoyed that. My first tech item I've ever had was my iPad. I got it at age 9. Started using it at age 12 because I had it in my cupboard just looking at it because I wasn't hitting the age that I was allowed to use it.
Yes.
My parents raised me very like old-fashioned. And navigating through and learning things that other people do made me realize, oh, I love this. And I started falling in love with entrepreneurship, and specifically entrepreneurship in tech. And I was like, okay, what would be the closest thing? There wasn't, at least at the time that I was looking for it, a direct degree in entrepreneurship. It's always like other careers or other degrees that end up in entrepreneurship.
Right.
And I was like, the closest thing that could be to entrepreneurship in tech would be computer science, very competitive. So I started with computer science. That was a bit of challenge because when I came here, I had to do a bunch of other courses. And then when I went to computer science, I was like, I can't see myself coding for a full day. I loved going to the classes, but at the same time, you know when you walk into a class and you're like, this is not for me? Everything was like showing it to me. Nature was talking to me, basically telling me that this room is not for you. You know, like when you cannot get out of bed,
Yes.
that class, that class probably not for you.
No.
And then so randomly, I had a conversation with one of the academic advisors at the business faculty. It was the first time I felt recognized, to be honest with you. It was a very fun conversation, and he was like, maybe you should apply to business. And I was like, okay, what if I want to still do computer science? He was like, you're not coming out of computer science, but you still apply to business. And I was like, sure. So I applied for the business faculty in summer. And then I got accepted right away, and I was still taking computer science. I wasn't taking any business course. I just wanted, because I did a bunch, I was like, I'm not doing business. And then as soon as I went to my first computer course after that semester, I could not. I dropped all my courses, switched completely to business, and start doing those academic advisors
And you're
meetings.
thriving.
Yes, I'm trying. Let's put it that way. I'm really.
You're just back from Enactus.
Yes,
So
that was a very interesting experience. There is something similar to Enactus where I came from. So Dubai, it's called What Works.
okay.
So I've had the experience in the past. It's a little bit different, but it's all about presenting new ideas. They normally have a topic that they pick every year. It's not
Okay.
the same with Enactus. You can work on the same project over and over again. You just have to kind of like advance the project that you had from every year.
Yes.
One thing I really liked was the connections I made with universities outside Atlantic Canada. And
Real life networking.
Yes! I was actually telling someone, I think I was telling you earlier, I feel like the closest people I found to Newfoundland people were people from Windsor, Ontario. I would say like they get along super well. They're very friendly, what I learned from people in Newfoundland. And I feel like it was honestly a fun experience getting to know all those universities. Yeah,
Yes.
our projects were actually really strong too, but you got to be realistic. When someone's doing good, they deserve to be at the front.
100%.
We're all fighting for a better future. If someone's fighting harder than me, I want them to stand on that
Yes.
stage. Yeah, and I will like stand up and do it
Yes.
as hard as I can. But it was very interesting to see how their classes work. It was so funny because with a couple of business students, I found it really interesting how we're doing the exact same courses, but the courses have different names. Which was really interesting. I did not know that. I thought that every course is exactly the same in every university, but that's not the case.
No.
It might be different. The way their university works, I learned about the way their projects are running, which, like, I found the differences, basically. That's all I was looking for. And I get to know more places in Canada.
That's right.
Educating myself in geography about Canada,
And like
basically.
even just like collaboration on talking about the projects that you all
One of the
did.
universities, University of Saskatchewan, I believe. I don't know the other university that I collaborated with, but they had a project that they reached out to another university and they collaborated, and I think they won the best collaboration.
Wow.
And I feel like that's very important, that if you go to a competition, learn from whoever is competing. Learn their strengths and take that and come back and work on your own weaknesses and put it into place. I really like that idea. I really like the new ideas that I've heard. One thing I learned about What Works, however, back home was that they would reach out to kids at elementary school because they believe that they're still in the mindset of dreams are possible.
Yes.
And they will create all these things that are very interesting, and you might think, oh, that's never going to happen, but they make it happen. They make it happen. One thing I don't know if I mentioned this in our last meeting that I had with Susan, but I remember when I was in elementary school at 4th grade, we had a bunch of people coming to our school from KHDA. The education system in UAE is beyond words. And they would just have these challenges that UAE was facing and just randomly ask the kids. So they were like, how do you think UAE gets its water? Having sweet water or drinkable water in UAE is one of the biggest challenges because we're right next to the Gulf. That's salt water. We don't have drinkable water. And
I imagine the bottled water is very expensive.
It's very expensive. Yes. Very, very expensive. And you might think, why would an adult go up to an elementary school and ask this question from a 9-year-old? Why would they do that? 10 years after, I was visiting my home. I was visiting my parents basically last year. I was in the subway and I saw this big machine that turns humidity into drinkable water, and it's free. And I was
an idea from a 4th grade student.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, this is very interesting how they come up. Now, I don't know exactly how long did it take for them to make that machine. Was it actually for a 9-year-old's idea or not? But I know for a fact that whoever come up with that idea is getting the credit for it. And they're trying as hard as they can to make a brighter future.
Wow.
And I was like, this is impressive. Sometimes the ideas rely with people that you never expect.
Exactly.
This is why I feel like, yes, Newfoundland is a small place, but it has potential. You never know the things that we can do in a small place and make it louder than people who have so many things available to them and are not doing anything. So that's one thing I really, really enjoy about small places like UAE. I know that the name is big, but they still have their own challenges. They have challenges with the weather. They have challenges with drinkable water. There's so many challenges everywhere you go. All that matters is if you take in new ideas seriously or not. And I think with Enactus, that's what they're doing. They're taking new ideas of students very, very seriously. And they're like, if they're doing it, it's possible. We can make it happen.
Yes.
If a bunch of university students with no experience are working on this business and they're running it, it's possible. It can happen. And that's one thing I always like to find everywhere that I go. New opportunities, new ideas, new people, because they will bring new ideas in place. And I'm like, fabulous. My people, my area.
There's definitely a value add to that as well. You know, going in, I know TechNL has a similar
they have the student
system,
weekly, yes.
exactly, where they kind of engage the students. I don't know if it's K to 12 or if it's a little bit of the older school aged kids, but going in and actually listening to their ideas, I think has a very positive effect even on the student more than the company. Because I can only imagine being a 4th grader and these big established people come in and they want to know what my idea is for something.
Yes.
And I think that will, propel this mindset in that young individual that, what I said was valuable, or someone was interested in my ideas. And then, you'll put them down a path, I think, that
and they do that for
they could become baby entrepreneurs,
yes.
and go into what I mean is that you may actually influence them so positively that
you might even say something that brings new ideas on their minds to work at. Another question that I just remember they asked was, So UAE is a Muslim country. They were like, imagine a tourist comes to UAE for the first time, Dubai specifically. How would you tell that this is an Islamic country? A lot of people said the way people dress. A lot of people said the difference in engineering, the difference in architecture and all that. I feel like what they were looking for was the mosques, because the mosques represent, the more mosques you see, that country is probably an Islamic country. Or where you go to another, like when I came here, obviously when I saw the churches and all the cars on a Sunday, I was like, okay, so this city is basically a Christian. I don't want to say like completely Christian, but the majority of the population are probably Christians here.
That's a fair statement.
So that's how it was. And that was the question they were having, because they wanted to know, do they need to spend more time making their city look like what they wanted? And that was a thing I learned at a very young age. So the first thing that whenever I'm traveling, the first thing I look, I'm like, okay, how does the city looks like? Okay, this is how it was. I actually, when I first came to St. John's, I'm gonna say it this way so it will make more sense. When I first came to St. John's, it was so interesting to me that an actual city, when you go downtown, you will see different colors of housings. And I was very interested, but I didn't know if I could ask that question or who should I ask that question from. Very like randomly, as I was walking, I walked into a store and someone was talking about it. They were saying how in the past, when people painted their boats, they would paint their houses the same color, so that would be an indication. And that was very interesting to me, because I quickly realized fishing and that industry must be really, really important in St. John's. Yes. So that gave me an idea, okay, this business is running hard in St. John's, because like their whole downtown looks like the way their past were. And that's one thing that I learned at a very young age, like in elementary school, to wherever I go, I pay attention to the architecture and the way the city looks, because then you'll get to know the majority of people there, you'll get to know the population there better, you'll get to know their values, the jobs, the businesses that are blooming. And that's one thing I would recommend to anybody,
yes,
really.
Lovely perspective, for sure.
So like as soon as you enter a city, start looking around, be like, even the cars look different, which is really interesting. But it's a nice aspect to look at it. I know that a lot of countries are now putting so much money into skyscrapers, and a lot of cities might look exactly identical. But at the end of the day, I'm sure that you'll find places in each city that's unique to that city, and you'll learn a lot about the history. You'll learn a lot about the religions that are practiced in that city, and how to respect them, because that's very important. When you learn about that early on, you will also try to educate yourself to respect their culture. You'll learn to respect their identity. You'll get to respect the things they value. And I find that very interesting, because when you don't educate yourself, you might find yourself in situations that are not very pleasant. Right. Like when I first came here, obviously I came from a different lifestyle, I would say. But the word thank you. The word thank you is very common, especially in Canada. You would hear that a lot. You would hear that a lot saying to the servers when you go to a restaurant. I didn't know that. And the first time I went to a restaurant, I didn't say anything. So everyone told me that I was very serious. And if I'm mad, I was like, no, I wasn't. And that's how I learned, you have to say,
my goodness.
You have to say thank you.
Yes.
You have to recognize that they're serving you at least. And I started to see the things that are different, and I started teaching myself, because if you want to fit in a location, whether you like it or not, you got to practice some stuff the same way as they do. I pick up the word best kind, for example. That was one thing that
Now you're officially a Newfoundlander.
Yeah, I'm a Newfie now. So I find that very nice, learning about different cultures, because now it's a part of me that I can't
That's right.
It's a part. It's going to be in my life forever. The things that I learned here, and I'm going to take it away with me wherever I go. So I would like to experience it to the fullest I can, because that's life.
It is.
Life's short. Anything else you'd like to chat about? I think we had a very interesting conversation.
I think so too.
Yeah. I learned a lot about you.
No, I guess only to say I'm so grateful our paths crossed.
Yes. Kaylah is me.
Yes. And we're definitely two peas in a pod for sure. And so grateful for Tequity for bringing us
for knowing you. and
Yes,
learning
together.
about
So
your
thank you so
career.
much for having me.
Thank you so much to Gale Force
Yes.
Winds, and again, thank you again to the Alt Hotel for having us in their beautiful location. I love this place. I see a lot of colorful houses right across from the street. So as I was talking, that was my inspiration for giving examples.
Perfect.
I hope everyone's having a wonderful time, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Winds. That's Gale Force Winds, WINS.com.